U.S. President Donald Trump is imposing a 10% global tariff after the U.S. Supreme Court struck down his IEEPA tariffs on countries across the globe. The ruling says Trump exceeded his authority by invoking federal emergency power laws to impose the so-called reciprocal tariff. So here to tell us what this all means and how it impacts Canada is Jean Charest, former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. Mr. Charest, it's good to have you join us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Lindsay.
So I'm wondering, what was the point of the Supreme Court striking down these IEEPA tariffs if Donald Trump is just going to turn around and impose these 10% tariffs anyways?
Well, it is a major victory for those who are opposed to tariffs. And what it does, essentially, it just reestablishes a clear fact. The competency over imposing tariffs is with Congress, not the executive and not the president. The president has emergency powers, and he misused them. That's what the Supreme Court is saying. He used them in a way that wasn't provided for in the law that he used. And so now it's back to the drawing board with all sorts of other consequences. And when he says that he wants to impose a 10% tariff over and above everything else he's doing, he's using another older piece of legislation, which allows him to do it for 150 days, Lindsay. But after 150 days, it has to be renewed by Congress. So not a very solid response on his side. Now, the downside to all of this is unpredictability, and the president clearly will seek other solutions. He'll try to lash out, and it means that we are just going to have to be very careful. On the Canadian side, we do not know at this time whether the 10% tariffs he's talking about would be over and above the fact that we have no tariffs under CUSMA, and there's zero tariffs for all the merchandise under the trade agreement. If that's the case, then it is bad news for Canada, even if it is short term.
I want to get to Canada, obviously, in a moment. As you're saying, still a lot of not a lot of clarity, I guess, for Canada, but we'll get to that. I just wanted to ask, first of all, Donald Trump is saying 232 and 301 tariff levels remain. Can you explain what he's talking about? What are those levels?
Well, for our listeners today, the tariffs that were struck down were broad-based. You could say to Europe, it's 15% tariffs on everything. The other tariffs, 232, 301, are product-specific. So in the case of 232, for example, he says he asked the Trade Department to look at a specific product to determine whether there's unfair practices. They have 270 days exactly to report back to the president. If they come back with a conclusion that says, yes, it's unfair, then he can impose a tariff. So there's a process in the case of 232. There's a process in the case of 301 also. And in the new 10%, apparently he's going to do it under this old legislation. It's only good for 150 days. So much more complicated for him than the tariffs, the broad-based emergency tariffs under national security pretext that he had imposed on much of the world.
Okay, got it. So, yeah, I want to talk about much of the world as well. But first off, you were talking about, how this will affect Canada. We've obviously got the renegotiation of CUSMA coming up in the summer. Still a lot of, not a lot of clarity, I guess, for Canada in terms of how this could affect us. Is that right?
Well, that's right. And what we do know that the difference between Canada and Mexico and the United States and other countries is the fact that our supply chains, Lindsay, are intimately linked. And that's why the fundamental interest of both sides is that we renew CUSMA. Otherwise, it would take tens of years, hundreds of billions of dollars to undo the supply chains that have already been built up. And for that reason alone, it makes just good common sense that we renegotiate CUSMA and also take into account the fact that these tariffs have cost American households in 2025 about $1,000. It's going to cost them about $1,300 in 2026, and that's according to the American Fed. They're the ones who are saying we're coming down with these numbers. So there's a cumulative effect here that argues for a renewal of CUSMA.
But is it really up to us at this point? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of chaos when it comes to negotiations with the U.S., with the White House at this time. I mean, how else can Canada try to protect itself?
Well, we're going to continue to reach out to every decision maker in the United States to make our case. And at one point, the dam will break, whether it's the people we do business with, small, big businesses, or the political allies that we have in the United States. The midterms are coming up. There's a cost to the American household in terms of it's like a tax. It is literally a tax on an American household. By the way, the biggest tax increase on Americans since 1993, Lindsay. And add to that the midterms that are coming up, affordability is an issue. These are all the cards that are out there that we need to work with. The real challenge, though, is the intangible uncertainty that we have on our economy, which is an intangible tax. And what that translates into is decisions not being made to invest, to go into markets, because people in business are waiting to find out where all of this is going to end up.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty at this point. Okay, that is Jean Charest, former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada. I appreciate you joining us and breaking this all down for us. Thank you.